Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones, and tonight I'm going to talk about elitism. Now, some might refer to it as white supremacy. Some might even refer to it as crony capitalism. Now, as an African American, we're probably going to look at it as white supremacy. Now, why would we do that? Because when it comes to who's running everything in the country, the system is run by a lot of white men. Even though we have African Americans who are in that 1%, i.e., like Jay-Z, and we have people like LeBron James, Robert Smith. When it comes to African Americans, most of us don't own anything. And the ones who do have money aren't really creating businesses. Now, there are a few Black businesses out there, but they're not large. I know a few like McKasick and McKasick, which is an architecture firm down in Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, there's Infrastructure Engineering Incorporated. The headquarters is in Chicago, led by Michael Sutton. And of course, the owner of the Charlotte Hornets is African American. I believe Michael Jordan is a part owner as well. But when we talk about elitism as an African American, we look at it as white supremacy. Now, whites would look at it as classism. But if you think about it, you look at the African American side and the white side, it's the same thing. We have one class of people running the country, and they want to use that class of people to run the world. Now, I say this because if you take a look at the workforce, wages have staggered. No, there are a number of women and minorities in the workforce. But if you think about it, looking at politics as well, we have the same people running the country. Why? Because elitism is power. But there's also a problem with elitism. When you have too few running everything and no trickle-down economics, you're going to have a number of people they're either going to be in poverty or they're going to have debt. Now, some may live comfortably, but the majority of us are going to live payday to payday. Now, when it comes to corporations out there that are run by elites like Walmart, Walmart doesn't care about its employees. That's a company that has a high turnover. But what Walmart does care about are the shareholders, the stockholders. And shout out to Sergeant Willie Pete. He had a video out about this when it comes to, what African Americans went through, redlining. I know when it came to Black Wall Street got destroyed by Caucasian people. Now, it did get built back up. However, the Black Wall Street, reason why that was destroyed is because it would cause harm to the white elitists because they wanted to run everything. In fact, as an African American man, many of us are begging white folks for jobs. But that's how the white elitists want it. They don't want us to have anything of our own because it threatens their power. When it comes to politics, many of the establishments are run by white male elitists. And even with the amount of African American athletes making money out here, they don't own the teams. And in the workforce, when you work as a wage, regardless of what nationality or complexion you are, you're basically a peasant. You have to follow the rules. But when it comes to elitists, they make the rules, but they also change the rules in the middle of the game. Now, there is a problem with elitism, and I'm going to share my screen. Well, it's not 2018, but this is an article from ordermag.com. Well, it's 2023. However, we survived the past year, but it was a stormy one because global politics was more unstable than at any time since the height of the Cold War. And maybe before that, populist leaders are wresting power away from establishment parties in country after country. Now, within the United States, political rancor and malfeasance may be leading toward a serious crisis. So, behind all these separate problems is one big problem all around the world. Our leaders and fundamental institutions are basically losing credibility. Why? Because the leadership, sharp-witted, globetrotting, educated at the best universities, has lost the support of wide swaths of regular people. Now, the reasons why are very complex. What the solution flies in the face of our expectations. Why? Because that leadership class needs to stop being elitist and start being elites. Now, elite and elitist both, for the most part, sound similar, but they're very different. Now, elitism is the defense of a high status group and its values, often with a sense of condensation and disparagement toward people who don't share that high status. Where when we deal with elitism as well, it's a feeling of superiority to most Americans because you went to Duke or Stanford or because you vacation in Switzerland. So basically, in general, elitism, as we are defining it here anyway, is inextricable from a sense of personal and class superiority. Now, it basically uses tokens of lifestyle, education, wealth, and privilege to elevate your perceived value over other people. So being elite, on the other hand, usually entails having those some tokens of status, education at fancy universities or colleges and high prestige occupations and so forth, but choosing to try to use them for good instead of basically paddling for one's personal ego. So basically, in short, being elite is basically taking on responsibilities of leadership. In short, being elite entails taking on responsibilities of leadership, which includes self-sacrifice, looking out for the common good, and being willing to make difficult decisions. It's the inverse image of snobbery. So basically, snobs and elites care about themselves, but elites, as we're defining them here, care about the institutions, organizations, and individuals that are under their care. Now, basically, from my humble opinion, when it comes to the problems, elitists are the ones who are causing the problems, but want people like me who are not elites to solve the problems. And it's a battle over the resources. And basically, with the elitists out here, they want to keep all the resources to themselves. And this is where we get into crony capitalism or greed. Now, the difference matters. Societies can't function without good leadership. We do not have good leadership. And while not all elites are good leaders, practically no elitists are. Why do I say this as if I know what I'm talking about? Because when it comes to living in the real world, now I am not a social scientist, I am not a scholar of religion, but I just use common sense. You have a number of individuals who don't understand why it's so unequal in society. Well, when it comes to the political parties, both political parties want cheap labor. And this is what happens or what happened when it came to slavery. Yes, could the Caucasian man have shipped the slaves back to Africa? Yes, they could have. They didn't because they liked that free labor because it enhanced their lifestyle. And if they had to ship the slaves back to Africa, it would become a cost. And see, when it comes to paying people in the real world. You might have an airline, you might have even a civil engineer, but the person running that company doesn't want to pay the surveyors, the technicians, the inspectors. And if they do pay them, it's going to be of little wage. And this is why a lot of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, when it comes to elitism, is it insecurity? It could be. But for the most part, we have so many people out here who hide under their job titles, their status in life. They look down on people who are hard workers. In fact, the ones who are hard workers, we call them the rank and file or the peasants. They have to follow all the rules. Whereas the elitists who make the rules, they don't have to follow the rules. They constantly make the rules to benefit them. Because in essence, when it comes to corporations out there, they don't want to pay people. Yes, there are a lot of help wanted signs out here for people looking for a job, but when you're asking for a job or begging for a job, you may get that job, but it's not going to be at the price you want. It's going to be at the price they're going to give you. And they're going to claim that the market dictates everything, which it does. However, you have people who are running corporations who don't care about the low man on the totem pole. This is why we have issues. And it is the so-called middle class who pays most of the taxes. There are not enough one percenters out there. So when it comes to elitism, you have individuals out there that are in a separate class by themselves. So looking at it from one standpoint, is it white supremacy? Maybe to African Americans and minorities, it is white supremacy, but to whites, it's classism. And if you look at it, they're both races are really looking at the same ordeal. And there's really no solving it because the elitists don't want to solve it because they want to keep all of the gold for themselves. So for the most part, as a peasant, it's modern day slavery. And one of the reasons why people don't want to work today is because of the wages. And if you're given a high wage, you're going to have to deal with more and more conflict with management. As for the most part, going back to all the corporations, you got to be a stockholder. And as a stockholder, you have some say in the company. You have some voting power to who's on the board of directors. But in the end, when you are a stakeholder is the employees. You don't have any of that. And when it comes to elitists, they have a selfish mindset. They don't care about anybody. And that's where the problem is. You see, when it comes to building a country, it takes everybody to build a country, build a community. But the individuals who are elitists don't care. They want you to continue to do all the work for no pay. So in the end, being an elitist, some of them are sociopathic, a number of them are narcissistic. And this is why you always have that argument, the wealthiest 1%. But the problem is, when I hear that particularly come from the Democratic left, a number of them, like Bernie Sanders, Maxine Waters, they are wealthy. And if they really cared about not being elite, some of them would step down, but they want that power. The problem with elitism is it's about control and power. And see, when you are the working person, you're being controlled by the power at the top. You see, the power at the top or the elitists, they don't have any inclination on solving a problem. And this is why we're going to continue to have the problems that we are going to go through. So, what am I saying? I'm saying this. Everybody here in America lives under the guise of white supremacy or elitism, depending on who you are. It's the same. Problem is, all of us working folks aren't on the same page. We have some Caucasian individuals who still believe that because they're Caucasian, they're going to get ahead. No, you're on the same level that a number of us Black people are. You live under the same system. In fact, when it comes to this system, it hurts everybody. Now, I don't believe in any of the dictatorial systems like communism and socialism. They don't work. But what I do believe in is if you want a fair advantage, particularly in the workforce, you might have to start your own business if you know how to do it. Everybody can't be a business owner. But elitism has caused a lot of injustices. Back in the days, we had oppressive colonialism. Now, when it comes to leadership, let's talk about the workplace. Reason why you have turnover in a lot of these big corporations is because the leadership at top doesn't care about anybody at the bottom. They believe that, okay, we can pay everybody at the bottom a low wage and we're going to constantly have turnover, but in the end, we're always going to make our money. And we don't want to care what's going on at the bottom because the lifestyle of people beneath us, to them, doesn't matter. So when it comes to white supremacy or classism, each and every one of us who has to go out and work every day, we're under control of that system because overall, when it comes to elitism, it's about power. And the people at the top do not want to give up their power. Power makes them feel good. And they get benefits from power. And this is why nothing is fair. None of us expect it to be fair. So in the end, when it comes to elitism, it's about power. And some of them use racism and classism. But regardless of where you are, when you're the sheep, you're the ones that are being controlled. When you're the ruling class, you make the rules and you set the bar any way you want. But in the end, when you're the ruling class, don't expect the peasants to solve the problem. You elitists out there, it's your job to solve the problem. You don't want to solve the problem. You love the problem because it enhances your wealth and control. And in the end, too much power fills your head. This is why you become psychotic and narcissistic. So I'm just going to say this to wrap it up. Elitism is about power. And when it's about power, it's a problem. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you are looking for some educational content, you check out the 411 Talk, you check out the QCIS channel as well. Now, can't find the QCIS channel or the 411 Talk Zone radio show on YouTube. You can check both of those channels out on Twitter. Now, for the QCIS channel, I take it one step further and find that channel on LinkedIn. And in the end, be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. You all have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.